Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another video for Not2Shabby Shop. We're going to make a slimline card today, and that's the size right there, 4 by 9.5, and we're going to use the Picnic Fun stamp set from the new spring summer release from Not2Shabby. So I'm just showing you I have the 3-inch Lawn Fawn dotted square die. I cut out 3 of those. I already cut out all my hills, the fence. I didn't end up using the trees. And I also used the grassy edge border die. So now I'm just using some It's a Boy ink from Catherine Pooler, and I'm going to ink up all 3 of these squares. And I just covered the entire thing on each square, even though it's not all sky, because I noticed that there was tape marks from my purple tape from being run through the die cutting machine, so I wanted to be able to turn it whichever way showed the least amount of splotchy tape area. And now I'm just taking my clouds that I cut out, and I was just adding a little bit of tumbled glass Distress Oxide ink to those so that they wouldn't be stark white against the sky. And I took my Doodlebug Hello Sunshine paper pad and picked out a whole bunch of papers that I thought would be good for paper piecing. That's right. I saw a bunch of my fellow design team members do this throughout the month, and I wanted to give it a try. I've never done it before. So first I'm going to use that tablecloth from the picnic table, but I didn't want those black lines for the checkers going through it, so I'm cutting it out of full stick Post-its first and cutting those right on the line, and then I'm going to use those to cut my pieces of pattern paper out, and we'll see if that works. And now I'm just going to stamp out the other images that I want to use pattern paper on. So the umbrella from the picnic table, the banners, I'm going to paper piece those, the little panda's dress and the little bird's dress. Is that it? I think that's it. And the tablecloths for the other tables that I use. But only one table has an umbrella. I do make 2 tables, but I only end up using one with an umbrella. It was a lot of paper piecing. I don't make you go through all of it. See, I already have the banners done and some of the tables and the little birdie's dress. But I wanted to show you, I wasn't sure how it was going to work. So I stamped these out. And for this one, I cut around the Post-it, and I still had to trim the one from the Post-it down, and then I went over it. I just trimmed a little bit off of each side to make sure it would fit inside my stamped image, and then went over the outside edge with my black memento marker, tuxedo black marker, and then I glued it right into the image. And I did the same thing with all the other pieces. I made sure first how they fit into their spot before I started trimming. And it's always better to have your image be a little bit oversized, your pattern piece, rather than too small. So just start bigger and go from there. It seemed to work best for me that way. I used my 2-way glue pen to glue all these in so there wouldn't be a whole bunch of glue mess. I tend to get messy when it comes to glue, and the 2-way glue pen worked well for this. I have to say, the panda's dress had a lot of corners and edges because of the picnic basket, but it fit really well. I was surprised at how well it fit in there. And after we get those paper pieces in, we're going to move on to setting up a frame for our card. I did put together the first 2 squares, but I wanted to show you how I set up the scene on the 3rd square. So I'm just going to use double-sided tape to adhere the clouds onto their square, trim that up so it's even with the square itself, and then I'm going to make sure my hill lines up with the rest of the scene. So here I am just making sure that I have the hill in the correct spot before I trim it down, and I'm just going to use I think on this one I used some wet glue, and I just glued it to the square really quick and set it with an iron. And then we're going to move on to, like I said, making that frame, because I could have left it, But I didn't want to leave these as 3 separate panels on the slimline card. I wanted to have a frame around them, even though there wasn't much space between the squares themselves. So I measured out my panel, or measured out on top of my slimline card, a 1/2 inch in from the top and bottom, and then I think it was like 3/8 in from the side, or maybe it was only an 1/8. I can't remember the measurements now. There wasn't a lot of wiggle room. Definitely not. So I penciled all that in because I knew it was going to be covered with a frame. And then I stuck all those down to the card front with double-sided tape. Now, because you can't see through the cardstock that I want to use as the frame, I'm going to use a piece of vellum. And I'm going to line up that same square die to make sure that the openings are lined up correctly. Now, I was going to go with a frame that was smaller than the squares themselves, but it just didn't leave enough room to play with my images for the scene itself, and I didn't want it to look too crowded. So we went with the same size square, and it just covers up the open areas. It's basically all this frame is doing. So after I did cut the vellum with the die, I went in and traced all those holes onto my cardstock that I was going to use for the frame. Die cut those squares out, and I added another piece of cardstock behind that one to make that frame a little thicker because it was kind of flimsy. So now I'm going to start gluing my grass and banners on, and I was just showing you there real quick that we're going to pop this up with double the height of foam tape because I wanted it to have some dimension in the scene. So I'm just gluing those banners across the front at the top. Some of them go behind the frame, some of them are glued on the front of the frame. All the grass is behind the frame itself. And then I'm going to go in with my foam tape, cut it to make sure that it's not too long, and then just put all my foam pieces on, top and bottom. And then in order to fit those skinny little pieces inside the frame, I cut my foam tape in half so it was about 1/4 inch wide, and then I cut it in half again. And that's how I got it to fit widthwise into those little tiny spaces between the squares. I did have a little bit of a hard time placing this onto the card panel because it was so flimsy, like the middle of it. But I decided to put some glue on top of the foam tape, and that seemed to give me a little bit more wiggle when I was trying to place it in the right position. So that worked a little bit rather than just sticking it down. And now we're going to play with the images and just glue them in place. So I have, if you notice, I cut the umbrellas off of 2 of the tables. And then the one in the center has the umbrella. You know, not every picnic table, especially at a park, has umbrellas. So I cut it off of some of them. Plus I thought with 3 umbrellas it would look way too crowded. And then we have the bird holding her pie over on the right side, and the panda with her picnic basket on the left. And then all I have to do is glue some of the food onto the tables themselves. So there's a pie on one, a pie and the grouping of apples in the center, and then another picnic basket on the table that's in the left. And for our sentiment, I'm going to use Hey Cutie Pie, and then You're Invited. So they're going to be 2 separate sentiments. I'm going to stamp them out with VersaFine Nocturne Clear, and then heat emboss them with clear embossing powder. And we're going to have Hey Cutie Pie towards the top, and then You're Invited down towards the bottom, a little bit off center. And I don't use a die for these. I just trim them down so that they're narrow enough to fit onto the frame that I created. And I'm just going to stick those down with double-sided tape because there's already double height of foam tape dimension on that card front. I did create 2 cards, but I didn't show you 2 cards in this video because this one was a little bit longer and involved, and there you go. So I'll show you these pictures first, and then the pictures using the Tea-Buddy set. And this is, unless I can squeeze another one out, my last video of the month. So I hope you guys got a lot of inspiration for the stamp sets for the spring summer release for Not Too Shabby. Make sure you head to the shop and check out JB's new release, and don't forget to use the coupon code. And if you like what you saw here today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be aware of the giveaways. I have one every month, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.